Well, they knew that, like, I would say that my desire to write and direct was probably more obvious when I was younger
Oh,
than to
okay.
Mm.
act. I think that acting was kind of a bomb dropped on them. Like, I don't think they would have seen that necessarily coming because I was so inherently, like, uh, quiet.
Right.
Mm.
But
And
you were writing. That's interesting.
I did. I wrote a lot, and I would write little plays
Oh, okay.
and film. I would make movies, but I was never in them. So I was
Mm.
like,
Mm.
I would like film my friends and write the movie. These obviously they're ridiculous like 13-year-old movies, but um, I would go into my mom's little office and edit them and score them.
Mm.
Um, and with my dad, like I just was always kind of drawing costumes and writing little play ideas. And so I think that they were very supportive of me all the time. I think that when I said I wanted to act, they both had were kind of like, really, like, come on, like, don't do
Mm.
that. A little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it was coming from like not wanting me to fail, to fail.
Mm.
Mm. Riley, I'm curious, 12 to 15 is a time where people are really forming their sense of identity. And you might have been born into the most famous American family in history, maybe the Presley family. And I'm curious, sort of like you grappling with that
Mm.
legacy of tragedy too in the family, the way that your grandfather passed, the way that loss shaped your mom. And you have this anecdote of when you listen to Elvis's music, sometimes you'd feel angry because you knew how his loss shaped your mom. And so I'm just curious to hear that kind of in your own words, what that was like for you, particularly at a young age as you're developing a sense of self.
Yeah, I guess the grief was there since I was born,
Mm.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I definitely had an awareness as a child, and I think children are very perceptive, and um, that there was like a sadness there.
Mm.
And then as I got older, I think that I recognized that his death was the root of that pain that I could feel in her. And so I did have like, but it also informed my relationship with him. And I think my relationship and my siblings relationship was had a sadness to it with his music, with
Mm.
him, because we were aware that of my mom's story and her loss and all
Mm.
that. So um I think that it also, you know maybe like very early on shaped the part of me that became sort of a caretaker in my family, probably.
I just think of it as a force that everyone is contending with, like every single person, because our culture is just completely entangled in the force of it, of celebrity and fame. And I don't really think that it has to do with any one person at all. And the idea of anybody growing up and having to contend with those forces earlier than most is yeah, it's just really interesting and tender. And it's I mean it's for a for kids to be having contending with grief and caretaking like that, I think is it's tough, but it's also beautiful. It's poignant.
Yeah, and I think it's like very common. I think that that's the thing that people ask me, like, to describe, what it was like to grow up in the world I grew up in, but I don't know where to start because it all feels very normal to me. Like, that's
Mm.
something that actually happened when I was writing the book. I would send it to my publisher and go, I could include this story, but it just feels really boring. Like, I don't know why. And he was like, none of this is boring to people. And 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 I think that like
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to have that perspective.
Sure, yeah.
Like I can obviously have an awareness that it's unique and totally crazy to people, but it just felt very normal. Like the I could imagine if you came into fame, actually it might be more difficult because it could feel uh really intense. But
Mm.
from my sort of earliest memories, it was that sort of intense kind of life of security and the media and like
Mm.
that kind of experience. So it's kind of all that I new. So I didn't feel, I mean, I'm sure it had like effects on me as a child, but I don't remember ever feeling like negative feelings towards it, actually.
That's profound, actually.
I was reading about and hearing you talk about your process for writing this book, and it sounded like you had a selection of recordings that your mom had already done that you combed through after her passing to be able to work on the book. And I wondered in that process, when you're writing anything, I think, and that's sort of a memoir, looking back on your life, I think there's times when it's just you're simply recording the memories, and then there are times where you are more reflective and you sort of realize new things about why you are the way that you are, or how this experience shaped you. And I wondered if you had any moments like that while you were writing, in learning about your mom, doing this deep dive on her, and then also your own memories.
I think that like my curse in life would be that I am like way too introspective. So I think that to the point where it's like a neurosis maybe. So I think that like there wasn't anything that I was like, wow, I didn't see this, tied to this. I think that there were what I had to do, because it was so deeply personal, was kind of find a way to, which I think you always do when you're a artist, is like like I was kind of in my like writing brain or storytelling brain when I was doing it, because it also offered some kind of like distance as well. So with that lens, I think that there were a lot of parallels that maybe I didn't notice between my mom and, because I think you're looking for that sort of thing when you're writing. Between my mother and her father, between my mother and myself, between myself and my daughter. So I think that and I don't mean in a trauma way, not generational trauma, because that feels very forefront and obvious, but like little things, like the tone we talk to our children in, the things we like my mom. In my view of my mom was that, like, this is really simple, not profound thing, but like she loved horses, and I never realized till I wrote this book that her mom like had that sort of same sense of freedom when riding horses, and her mom's, and then it made me reflect on her mother's experience as a child, basically growing up at Graceland also, and having this like freedom in riding horses. And so there were all these kind of like parallels that I guess I hadn't seen before.